Good evening and welcome to this special show to mark International Women's Day. Now, before we begin, as you'll probably be aware, I'm often joined on these shows by my friend and co-host Peter Haddock. And on one occasion, I was joined by Peter's son, Lucas, who, frankly, is way cooler than his dad. Well, Lucas isn't too well at the moment. So from all of us here at Demolition News and Diggers and Dozers, get well soon, Lucas. Now, on with the show, the important part of the show. She probably won't remember this, but I first met Jacqui Miller-Charlton, or Jacqui Miller as she was back then, in roughly 1988 or 1989, back in my contract journal days. At that time, I was a young journalist beating a keyboard each day and trying to make a name for myself. She was a fresh-faced teenager who had recently joined a family business with a growing reputation for its range of excavator buckets. 3 decades later, and I'm still beating a keyboard each day, and I'm still trying to make a name for myself. Jacqui, meanwhile, is on the board of what is now an international business. She's got an MBE to her name. Not that I'm bitter. And to make matters worse, I now look like this. And Jacqui looks like that. Good evening, Jacqui.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, very well indeed. Thanks for joining us tonight. I do appreciate it.
No problem. My pleasure.
I
think I should be moving
you've just moved the wrong way, actually.
Yeah,
that's better. I can see you nice and clearly now. I was just, alluding to the fact that I first met you some years ago, and in many ways you were ahead of your time, really, as not just a woman in a man's world, but you were a woman in the metal bashing side of a man's world as well. So even more so. What hurdles did you have to overcome way back when?
Well, back in those days, it was really quite a sexist environment. Things have changed, thankfully, for the better, but it was difficult. But, we were brought up in a very close-knit family, myself and my 2 brothers, and I had always had their support and the support of my mum and dad. And what my mum always used to say to me, if you can't stand the heat, get out the kitchen. So, I thought, well, this is the career choice that I've made and the path that I'm going to forge my career in. So I need to understand how I can overcome such hurdles. It wasn't just sexist. It was, there were it wasn't just the remarks. It was the fact that you couldn't possibly know what you were saying or doing, or had any kind of understanding of what the client wanted, because you were a woman, and it wasn't a woman's job to know what someone in the construction sector or a quarry face needed. So that was quite difficult. But looking back, would I have handled things differently? Probably not. I'm a person of understanding context, and back then that's the way it was. I'm not suggesting it was right, but it's just the way it was. And so trying to force today's, equality and we've come on leaps and bounds, thankfully, as I said earlier, but trying to force, the new parameters and make them fit to the period that I first started out, they just don't. And so I accepted it for what it was, and I got on with the job.
You mentioned, we have unquestionably come on leaps and bounds, and yet we still have a movement for women in construction. We've still got a major gender imbalance. I think we're talking about possibly less than 11% women in the UK construction industry. How are we still talking about this now? How is this still an issue?
Well, I've got several ideas on that one, and they stem from education. I don't think that we're doing enough to educate girls at a younger age that it's okay to be an engineer, and it's okay to be a scientist, and it's okay to be an astronaut, and it's okay to do all the jobs that traditionally men were cut out to do. We seem to get to a certain age as females, and then even toys, for example, they're all stereotypical of what girls should be playing with and boys should be playing with. I mean, the simple fact is that nothing should be out of bounds, provided the person understands what's required of that job. So I think we need to wrap a whole lot of education around that process and start making it okay for it to be much more inclusive from a much younger age. I also think that large companies should be doing more and seeking to bring in more girls, not just in an office environment, but in an engineering environment, in a scientific environment, in the boardroom environment. I would like to see an awful lot more women taking those seats. It is no accident, in my view, that some of the most successful businesses within the FTSE 100 have both male and female almost in equal parts on their board. And the reason is, when we collaborate, we can achieve so much more.
I totally agree, and yet we've just had a question. Well, with a lot of questions in actually, and one of them comes from my friend Peter Haddock here, and if I can throw it up on the screen, and this is really indicative. When we originally set out to do this show to coincide with International Women's Day, we were going to have on as guests a couple of female operators and women from different parts of the sector. But there's been so much negativity and so much social media backlash when we've done it before that we've had people cry off. And I mean, we had an instance recently where another of my friends, Nick Drew, featured a young woman as an operator. And she took such abuse. She asked him to take the post down, and she's actually left social media entirely herself. There are times it just doesn't feel like we've moved forward at all.
Absolutely, and that's despicable and disgusting, and every other negative connotation you could attach with that. I think these people on social media who are doing this, they're bullies, and they're outdated, they're egotistical, they're biased, outdated, and prejudiced. And probably egotistical too. I think that the solution here is for men to work with women into getting past these outdated attitudes, and for men to stand up for women within their company and actually support a woman's cause into offering those roles within the construction sector. Why shouldn't a woman be a plant operator if that's what she chooses to do? Why shouldn't a woman, be driving a truck if that's what she chooses to do? That's her choice. Every bit as it's a male choice. And, we shouldn't be questioning that in 2021. It's utterly disgraceful. And I've no idea. These people have so much bias. There is no place for it any longer. It's like racism, it's the same thing. There is no place for it. We want equality. We want collaboration. We want unity.
And it strikes me that people just aren't reading between the lines. And I told this story recently. I took, as one of my options at school when I was 13, 14, I took typing. I knew I was always going to end up being in an office, so I took typing. And the initial reaction from my friends in the football team were, you typing, you and 29 girls? Oh, hang on a minute, you and 29 girls? Surely that's a good thing, isn't it?
Exactly.
And but my friends saw that sooner or later.
But that's the point, isn't it? That's exactly what I would have said to you. Wow, good for you. It's getting back to what I said earlier. It's the stereotyping, and we're in 2021, and it's stereotyping of 50 years ago. We've got to move past that, and the only reason we're going to get industry to listen is if we have some leading businesses take up this mantle and start making initiatives built around this. Now, there was some movement in the construction sector, a few years ago, but unfortunately, it doesn't seem to have had much gravitas, or we certainly haven't seemed to have made much progress. But I do know some large construction companies are very aware that this dynamic must shift. But I do think that it's on big business and it's on government to start looking at getting rid of stereotypes and telling people, male or female, you can do anything that you want to do, provided you want to do it hard enough. So that's all it is. It's about what is your desire? What is it that you really want to do? And go for it. And you should not have to face stigma because you want to do something different now. And of course we do. So we have to work hard at getting rid of that stigma, and we have to work as a unified team in doing that.
Now, one of the criticisms that we still hear about women, aside from the fact that they can't lift stuff and they're not strong enough and all that old nonsense, but apparently women just get pregnant and leave. Construction companies train them up, they get pregnant and leave. Now, you had your first child, if my facts are correct, you had your first child in 1990 when your company was expanding internationally, and you had your second in 2002 in the midst of a major rebranding. This women get pregnant nonsense is precisely that, isn't it? It's just nonsense.
Well, let's be very thankful that women do get pregnant. Otherwise, we would have no human race.
It would be a very quiet show tonight, wouldn't it? Let's face it.
That's the first point I'd like to make. The second point is I can't even begin to express how annoying that, that whole situation is, that we're still harping back to, should I employ someone because she's female and she may get pregnant? That's her choice. And we hope she does, because, future of humankind depends on it. I think that if a woman is set on a career path the same as a man, she will have her children and she will go back to work, because it is not, children do not define a person. Children are part of who you are as an individual. They are my two kids are the best thing that ever happened to me. But the reality is that they both are grown up now. They both have their own lives. I'm immensely proud of both of them. And I also forged a career path. So you can do it all. You just have to work maybe a little bit harder, but it depends on how much you want that.
We had a guest on recently, a guy who runs a construction company in the Midlands, and he's got 5 children, 3 of which are girls. And he has made a really sort of a big point of teaching all his 5 children all aspects of the business. But his belief is that this gender inequality is actually born at least partly in the home. I'm assuming the fact that you worked alongside your 2 brothers, that wasn't the case in the Miller household.
Definitely not. I mean, we worked as a team and we didn't see gender as an issue. We actually encompassed the differences between us, and we all had different strengths. And we worked on those strengths to develop the business together as a team. We were brought up as a very, very tight family, and both of our parents worked extremely hard to get us a break. My mum and dad remortgaged the house to get my older brother, who's now back in the chairman's position at the company and running things magnificently well. They backed him and put their house on the line to give him the first loan for the business. So we were brought up in a very tight family, and that meant that we could work together and work not always in harmony, because obviously when you're in business, you're passionate about things. You have to be passionate about things, otherwise success won't follow. But yeah, never had any issues about the fact that I was a woman. They celebrated that, and I was in the boardroom and I brought a completely different set of ideas because I'm a woman. And that's why I said earlier, it's absolutely no accident that FTSE 100 companies have a mixed board. Those that are doing much more success, those that are enjoying much more success.
It's always struck me, Jacqui, that rather than adapting to fit into a man's world, you've kind of, I don't know whether you fought, but you have retained your identity. You've always been very feminine, very glamorous. Was that a conscious decision, or is that just the way you are? And now that a lot of the guys that I'm about to talk about have retired, I can safely say this. I think I used to work on a couple of magazines, and they would come to Miller, or the ad salesman would come to Miller to try and sell advertising. And it was almost like a baptism of fire, because they'd arrive and there was this fresh-faced young blonde girl who probably didn't know a great deal, who then proceeded to tear them a new one on a fairly regular basis. And they were sent away with a flea in their ear. That is the persona that you've built. And is that a reaction to the fact that you are a woman in what is still perceived as a man's world, or is that just Jacqui Miller or Jacqui Miller-Charlton as you are now?
Good question. So I did get the nickname the Iron Lady, so that might give you some indication as to my determination and very steely character. I think that the environment I forged my career in, I would have to be that Iron Lady, because back then, you know, prejudice and bias and all sorts I had to cope with, which I alluded to earlier, but I overcame. I wouldn't have been able to overcome that if I'd been a softer character. So, you know, I understood very quickly and I learned very quickly, and I took those lessons on board. Did I make a conscious decision to be glamorous? I made a conscious decision to be the best me that I could be. And if that's glamorous, well, then maybe, I don't know. I've never tried to be anything other than who I am. And, you know, I was brought up to take a pride in your appearance and to, you know, put your best foot forward and always be respectful and proud of what you've achieved and work hard. So I don't know. I mean, I just did what came naturally, I think. I mean, I'm lucky that I've been blessed with, you know, some kind of looks, I suppose. And I've worked hard to keep in shape and make sure that, you know, I take care of my health. So all of these things are really important, but those were the things that I was taught as a child. And as far as you know, me tearing them a new one, well, yeah, like they stood on my toes. I have a story in Australia, when I was in a big quarry face and I was talking about the quick coupler and the millimate, and I asked any of the guys. There was about 40 Aussie guys, and I was mic'd up and I said, has anybody got any questions? And one smart Alex stepped forward and says, yeah, how many more Sheilas we're going to get over here? And I said, well, that'll be one, just me. Has anybody got any sensible questions? So that would be how I would answer someone like that. So, you know.
Now, it's interesting you mentioned the overseas thing, because one of the things, you know, I've watched the growth of Miller groundbreaking over the years, and you are very big in overseas locations, places like India and China, which, you know, even by our standards, you know, as an outsider looking in, are perhaps not quite as progressive as perhaps we are. How are you perceived over there?
Actually, it's really interesting because India are very progressive when it comes to women, you know, equality, except they have been for some time. I mean, you know, India's had a female prime minister. They've got lots of female ministers. So they're actually quite progressive in their attitude towards women. And there's a great many exceptionally clever, bright women in India. And I've worked there a great deal. And so I actually... sometimes I had a problem, but nothing more than I would have had in my own backyard. China, a little bit more difficult, but again, I was able to overcome that and break some barriers. But I found more of a stigma actually in Japan, because in the 90s, it was still very unusual for a woman to be in a senior position in Japan. And so when I went over there, they thought I was the secretary once. I was in a meeting and I was waiting for my boss to turn up before I could meet the guy. They actually didn't realize it was me that he had the meeting with. So, no, but I laugh about these things, you know. And I did. This lady, this Japanese secretary, receptionist, was horrified, looking at me pleadingly. Of course, I was never going to drop her in it, you know, sisterhood and all that. But, you know, hey, and when you're traveling, when you're dealing internationally, you know, there's the old saying, go native. So I used to do my research, and I used to understand what sort of, you know, how would they find me? What sort of prejudices would I be likely to face, etc. And every challenge, there's an opportunity to change someone's mind.
Now, you were awarded an MBE in 2013. Congratulations, somewhat belatedly. How did that come about?
Well, quite frankly, I've no idea. I was doing my job, and I was traveling all over the world and opening up distributors for the company and working very hard and flying the flag for Britain. I used to do a lot of, I used to go to the embassies, etc., and try and break down barriers. I used to use DIT a lot. Well, it was UKTI then, they keep changing their name, but basically the same thing. And I found some of those guys extremely helpful. But, you know, you still have to do a great deal of work yourself. So I was always trying to find research first with me. I wanted to understand what would I have to overcome? What would the business have to overcome? How much money was it going to cost for market entry? And all of these things were really important for development and growth, because obviously you can see a new market as an opportunity for growth, but it also can be a money pit, and you need to know how long is it likely before you're going to get a return on that investment. And trust me, in some of these markets, you know, they didn't have a clue what a quick coupler was, and so seeding is extremely important. It's an extremely difficult job, rather. You know, it's the easiest thing in the world to jump on the back of someone else's success, but when you've got a brand new product and you're seeding a market and you're trying to actually explain why this is very necessary, it is no mean feat, and it costs an awful lot of money. As my brother once said, negative know-how is exceptionally expensive to learn.
Now, well, funnily enough, speaking of the business, I know you're still on the board, but you've taken a step back from the day-to-day running of the business. What prompted that decision?
Well, we were looking to bring in an external management team, and obviously, if you bring in an external management team, we were all stepping back at the time, myself, my two brothers. Then, you know, you can't be have a foot on the train and a foot at the station. And through that transition, we brought in some very senior people to help us with the, you know, period of handing over, because, you know, it's like another baby. And we brought this team in, and we managed them, and then we let go of the reins. And unfortunately, all sorts of things happened after that. And it's not always a successful handover, by the way, because people are either your biggest asset or your biggest liability. And unfortunately, it turned out that our management team became the latter after a number of years. So my elder brother and my two older brothers had to step back in and take back the reins, which he's done magnificently so. And my other brother still has a hand in all of the development of the product and oversees some of the things the engineering guys are doing. And I look at some of the marketing things. I mean, we're all still involved in terms of looking at how, you know, we can take the business forward. But my older brother, of the two older brothers, I've said, Keith, he is doing a sterling job through exceptionally difficult circumstances. And the business is actually doing exceptionally well, extremely well.
I was just about to ask you how Miller is going these days. I mean, as I say, my first exposure you were a bucket company, and a bucket became an attachment company, became a quick coupler company, became an international quick coupler company. You seem to be going from strength to strength. Is that actually the case?
Well, we've had some ups and downs. Trust me, it's been very, very challenging upon me. But as I said, the chairman stepped back in. We've got an amazing team. He's reshaped the people. He's bringing in more people with the senior management team. We have some fantastic new products. The GTS, the GTX, new quick couplers. I mean, the best quick coupler in the world just keeps getting better. We invented the automatic quick coupler technology, and we remain the best product in the world. That's no accident. We've spent millions on this new product line, and we've invested in it, and it is the best. And so for those of your listeners who are thinking about quick couplers, look no further, because, you know, we're bringing out two brand new products which are simply light years ahead of anything on the market. We're looking at reinvesting in additional overseas markets, and we've also spent millions in investing in the plant where all the products are manufactured. So yes, the business is growing from strength to strength. We've had our challenges. It's been exceptional, difficult 12 months, but we've got an amazing team headed up by, a very experienced chairman who knows the industry inside out. And, that kind of experience you can't buy.
I kind of feel like I need to complete the set now, because Keith was one of my first guests on my old podcast. I'm probably going back about 10, 12 years.
You should definitely have a conversation with him. It would be very interesting for your listeners, and he can tell you and share with you what plans we've got. They're very exciting.
No, fantastic stuff. You can see there we've had, we've got comments coming in all the time, but I thought you'd probably enjoy that one quite a bit. Always loved Miller's couplers.
Always love Miller couplers. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, funnily enough, I mean, just to show you how I tend to view things now. Bearing in mind we're talking about women in construction, we had a comment in earlier, and I will put it on the screen. It's from one of our regular viewers, Ken Hatcher, and for one horrible moment I thought it said, "I like your hair," and I thought, oh God, we've got somebody else that's going down. He likes my hat, so your hair hasn't even got a look in. So yeah, thanks for that, Ken. I quite like the hat as well.
I made the same comment myself, did I not, Mark? When we
you did indeed, absolutely. Now, I did mention at the very beginning that you are probably the first person with an MBE we've ever had on the show. And I think it's fair to say you're probably the only person we've ever had on the show that has actually got their own mantra, which apparently is "be the difference that makes the difference," which seems wholly appropriate. What does that actually mean to you?
Well, what it means to me is really simple. It's about making a difference to yourself and someone else. So I used to tell the team, look, we have no idea what someone is going through or has gone through, or what kind of morning they've had, or what's happened in their life. We all get up and go to work because we either have to or we want to, or, whatever the circumstances are. And then if we can, because we have to interact with these people, why not make a difference to them? Why not walk in, either when you're having a call or a face-to-face, why not be the difference that makes the difference to their day? And if you continue to try and see it from someone else's perspective and not always your own, then you've got an awful lot better opportunity of understanding what it is they really need from you. And it is incumbent on all of us who are in the service sector at selling to our customers out there to understand, what do they need? What do they need that's going to make their job better? What do they need when they're in the coalface to improve their circumstances, to deliver that project on time? What is it that will make a difference to them? And so I used to tell my team all the time, be the difference that makes the difference, because I always tried to live by that mantra. And by the way, I'm only ever work in progress. I'm trying to improve myself every day. So, I would never profess ever to have mastered that mantra myself. But as long as I keep trying, as someone said, reach for the stars, kid. And if you fall on the moon, it's not too shabby.
I should be noting all of this down. We've got, as I say, we've got lots of people watching, but we've had one here, David Wiley. If you don't know David, he's actually a journalist, and he has said, as tilt rotators gain more acceptance, is Miller looking to produce these units? Might be a question more for Keith, but I'll ask it to you anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. We already have some tilt couplers, so we've got a lot of innovation that's been happening, and we've got a whole suite of new products. We're constantly pushing the boundaries. At Miller, we were never about status quo. We were all about invention, and we were all about innovation. And we know our business like no one knows the business. I mean, we invented the whole thing. So absolutely. And, as I've said, watch this space. There are some amazing new products coming out. But and I agree and fully concur, it would be great for you to have Keith on the show, because he can share with the audience exactly what we're developing at the moment and when things are, when these products are likely to be released.
You all heard it here first. This is fast becoming the Miller Show, so watch this space. Now, obviously, we are speaking on International Women's Day. If you could offer one piece of advice to a young woman contemplating a career in construction, demolition, heavy engineering, what would that advice be?
Well, it would. So you've got to have the characteristics and the traits to be able to work within the sector as it is now. And as we've discussed, unfortunately, there are still some unwanted bias around. So if they're trying to carve themselves an opportunity within the industry, they need to be prepared for that. But that doesn't mean that they shouldn't. That just means that, there'd be one more person helping us to solve this dilemma. What advice I would give them, I'd give the same to anybody forging any kind of career on any career path. Make sure it's what you love. Pick something you're going to do that you love, because you're going to be doing it for the best part of 50 years. And you need to love that if you want to do it every day for 50 years. And if you don't do it, because you would be being unkind and unfair to yourself and putting a lot of stress on yourself. So from the get-go, understand what it is you want to do in life and focus your energy on delivering that and being in the mindset that allows you to go to work every day with a smile on your face and loving what you do, which will also enable you to overcome all the pressures and stress of the work environment. Because I've always loved what I've done, but it came with a price, a lot of stress. We were forging ahead, we were building an international business. But the fact that I was passionate about what I did helped significantly overcome those times of stress where, it was really, which way do I go here? But the reality is we have to love what we do. So I would ask anybody, any young girl, just please make sure it's what you want to do. And if it is a job in the construction sector, then I would challenge as many large construction outfits out there to come on, let's do something together and make a difference. And actually, I'll throw one out there. If you would like me to be the face or the ambassador for an initiative, then I'm happy to work with you guys and help do that.
Well, I was about to follow that up with the old adage, which I never get right. If you do something you love, you never work a day in your life. But I think offering to be an ambassador, I mean, I don't want to sound like the Jacqui Miller-Charlton fan club here, but if ever the industry had a poster girl, poster woman, poster person for women in construction, surely you must be it. You tick all the boxes. Somebody needs to make it happen. There's an ambassador waiting to happen here. Jacqui, look, I'm very conscious of the fact that I'm taking up a lot of what is fast becoming your evening, and I'm sure you've got better things to do. But given the fact that you have taken a step back and you've accomplished all you've accomplished, how are you filling your days these days?
Oh my goodness, how long have we got? In true entrepreneurial fashion, it just isn't in my nature to step back and do nothing. When I stepped back from Miller, I started to mentor young up-and-coming businesses and give them business advice. I wanted to give something back, and I wanted to give it back to my local community first and foremost. And then I was working with, I am working with rather, and continue to work with my Indian partner, and we have developed, along with our team, have developed what's going to be a sensational app within the mindfulness space, which is called the Indian Monk. And that's going to do, it's never been needed more in post-COVID, with all of the issues surrounding mental health and, all of the issues that people have had to go through to overcome these lockdowns and the tension and the worry and all sorts of dreadful things that people have had to go through, being separated from loved ones, etc. And more recently, I'm delighted to say that I have joined forces with a gentleman and another partner, another couple of guys, actually, all men. I'm still working with all men, by the way. except my trusted PA, Denise. But this gentleman invented a sleep technology, not an app and not a watch that tracks sleep, but a technology that actually improves deep sleep. And it's called Sleepergize. And that product's going to be launched within the next 2-3 weeks. This is literally a game changer. So for anybody listening that has trouble sleeping, this has been designed to reprogram and rehardwire the subconscious part of the brain into getting more deep sleep. As we age, we get less deep sleep. In fact, from about 60, I think it's something in the region of half an hour, 30 minutes, where we used to get, 160, 180 minutes when we're 20. What this does is it strips back the years, and over a period of 30, 60 days, it reprograms the brain to go into deep sleep. And that deep sleep is the part which restores you. So it's the part that energizes you. It's the part that fixes things that's wrong in your body when you go to sleep. It's one of the most vital parts of sleep. And this gentleman who I'm working with now developed that about 6 years ago and been testing it ever since. He actually developed it, the initial concept in the States. And its ambassador and big fan is the ex-chief medical officer of NASA, no less. So it's incredible, and I'm very excited about these opportunities, and I'm working as hard as I ever was, and I'm obviously still very, very, I'm a very active participant and supporter of Miller. It remains one of my other babies and always will, and so I'm exceptionally proud of the team and the work they're doing, led up again by my brother, who's, as I say, excuse me, doing an amazing job.
I don't know quite what's happened. I don't know if the sun's gone down exceptionally quickly where you are, but all of a sudden you are nothing more than a silhouette.
There you go.
Oh!
I put the light on.
That's much better. As you can see on the screen there, that's probably Neil Rutter, I would guess, at Gorilla Drones, wants to pre-order one of your apps, or your sleep systems, rather. Peter Haddock wants to test drive. I do sense that you and I are actually going into competition on this, as it happens, because 9 times out of 10, my shows tend to send people to sleep, but not on this occasion, I don't think. I think you've kept people pretty much wrapped throughout on this.
Well, if anybody wants to know more about Sleepergize or they want to buy it, we're not road testing, unfortunately, because we don't need to. The product's already proven now. But there is a starter discount which will be removed, so anybody who gets in first will be able to have access to that discount. But if they do want that, I'm very happy to, I think you've got an email address there, Mark, yeah? Give to everybody.
I may well have. If I haven't, it'll be in the show notes before the show ends, so yeah, not a problem at all.
Okay, because if they just send an email into that, or jacquimch@gmail.com, then I'll get the information sent to them. Happy to do that.
Yeah, David makes an interesting point there. I did a few articles about maybe 2 years ago now with Caterpillar, who are doing sleep monitoring, and we're coming back to construction now, but sleep monitoring to make sure that people aren't falling asleep in the cabs of dump trucks. So I guess there is a bit of a crossover between your original company and this new venture as well.
Well, I'm passionate about this product because the world needs it, particularly post-COVID. And if we didn't know, I mean, if you just look up Dr. Matthew Walker and see, he is a sleep professor and one of the most eminent in the world. But if you start doing Google searches on how important sleep is to your health, it is the single most important thing to our health. Forget nutrition, forget everything else. If we sleep well, everything else that we're adding to that is just assisting us. To sleep well is vitally, vitally important. And you're absolutely quite right. In terms of safety and health and safety, it's so important that people get the right amount of sleep before they drive a machine for 8-9 hours a day. Absolutely right. And for all those construction companies out there, if you want to give your drivers a sleepergise, then get in touch with us and I'll do a deal for you.
Now, just going back to your brother Keith, he is and always will be welcome on the show, but I think there might be a queue. Peter Haddock wants to get him on his podcast.
Of course,
Peter, I'm not working as Keith's agent, so you don't need my permission. I'm sure just make the call and we can get that going.
If you just ring Miller and ask to speak to Cheryl, and she will set up any interviews, but he'd be delighted. He's got lots of news, very interesting news to share. No,
in actual fact, I think Peter is scheduled to be coming up to see Cheryl and the team in the not too distant future. So he may be able to kill two birds with one stone. Your PA, Denise, has very kindly added the link to the Sleepergise. Thank you very much for doing that, Denise. So that is there now. Yep, that's in place. So as I say, I'll add that to the show notes as well. Jacqui, it's been an absolute pleasure, as it always is. Really appreciate you giving up the time. And yeah, if anyone out there is looking for a female ambassador, look no further. We've certainly got the right person here. Jacqui, I'm going to let you get on with your evening.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you everybody for tuning in.
No problem at all. I'll see you again soon.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, some food for thought there. Funnily enough, I'd originally written a few words to conclude on this, which I was going to actually say, Jacqui should be the poster girl for women in construction. Well, I think that speaks for itself. Yeah, and we are. When I've been talking about women in construction before, one of the things that has always come out is you can't be what you can't see. This idea of you need to be, whether it's a racist thing, whether it's a sexist thing, you need to be able to see others doing the job in order to be able to follow their footsteps. Jacqui has been there; she's done it. As I say, she's way younger than me, but she's been doing this for 30 odd years. She's built a hugely successful global company, and she's still looking for new opportunities. So there you are. I'm going to leave you where we've had another couple of comments. Let's start at the top. Thank you, Jacqui. Brilliant show, Mark. Well, it's a lot easier to do a brilliant show if you've got a decent guest. So absolutely. Another great show, Mark and Peter. See, Peter gets the praise even when he's not even in the room. So yeah, no, quite right too. He is a big driver behind these shows. In actual fact, it was Peter's idea to get Jacqui on, and it was a great idea as well. So I think that will probably do us for tonight. I'm back here again tomorrow at 10 a.m. for the Breakfast show. We're working on a few other bits and pieces, and this time it will be Peter and I together. Just to prove that Miller were actually tuning in as well. We can't wait. Yeah, I shall be seeing you guys in the very near future. But in the meantime, thanks ever so much for tuning in. Thanks to Jacqui. Thanks for Denise for making that happen. Thanks to Cheryl as well. She was instrumental in this. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for your comments and your questions. And I will see you all again very, very soon indeed. Thank you.